Hi, Gbenga. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, it is great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Nice. Jumping right in, let's start from the beginning. Some context.
First of all, thank you again for inviting me. It's
You're
interesting
welcome.
because, there was a pivotal conversation that I remember having with you because, we used to do martial arts together in Lagos. And I remember one
Yes.
of those things you're like, Minga, you're going to do so much better outside of Nigeria. And I mean, even though it was an idea that had been brewing in my mind for a bit, I know that there's that conversation. Like, you know what, this is actually an interesting confirmation of some of this stuff that I've been having. And I remember just again keeping those ideas in my head, and after a while, deciding to act upon them. So yeah, thank you for that extra kick in the butt. Lit-
You're most welcome.
Literally. But yeah, so I think growing up, I was accustomed with moving a lot. I wasn't an only child, I was the last child. So I spent a lot of time by myself. And what that meant was that the world to me very quickly was huge. The characters and the stories that I was reading were not like me, you know. Of course, I was reading this old books. I think I was reading She Stoops to Conquer, Pride and Prejudice. At least those were the ones I remember. Because I was running through all the
Yeah.
books in the house because I had nothing to read. So very earlier on, I knew that the world was huge, and I really wanted to be in that world, be a part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, and this was me growing up in a village, right? We had a farm at the back of the house where you'd go in the evening to go and pick, the way they put okra and pepper to make in the evening
Uh,
meals. It was, I loved, at the time, I didn't know that I loved it. I was like, I can't wait to get out of here. But looking at me now at this age, building that kind of home as well, and, in the village that I grew up, like rebuilding a space exactly like that, it just is a testament to how good I had it, and I'm just grateful to be able to look back now in gratitude. So yeah, these early books were the things that shaped me. That just said, look, the world is big. You got to be a part of it. And much later on, that determined the kind of schools I went to. I never stayed back at the village school. I went into the town, not the city, into the town for my high school.
yeah.
And afterwards, I said, you know what? I don't want to stay in Lagos. Because again, Lagos is not very far from my village. So it's like, you know what? I'm going to go into North Central. So I went to the North Central of the country to study.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was it. I was in that school for 4 years. Well, 3.5 years, just there on my own. I got some scholarship that my parents didn't know about.
You sound like like you were an intriguing son to have.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's also a reaction to the way that they treated me, right?
Yeah.
I think it was a kind of response to the way that I was treated. I don't like, I'm great. I'm happy that these things happen because it meant like I am who I am, independent,
Yeah.
just completely able to survive regardless of where I'm put, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about your siblings and your early days situation. You were the youngest one, so what was the age difference between you and your most elder sibling?
9 years. Oh no. So, they really planned this thing out, right? So it was 2 years. So 2 years, two
Yeah.
years, 2 years, 2 years. So that's another 10 years.
Mhm.
So about 20 years between myself and my oldest sibling. Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. So I can understand, like your context as a young child, having to keep yourself entertained, having to see the world from different perspective. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Nice.
It was. I think there was the first time I knew what deep sadness was the day
Yeah.
that I finished the last book in the house. And I was like, oof,
Wow.
so what's my purpose now?
It was that powerful for you.
Yeah, I was like 9 or so. And
Wow.
indeed, some of the books I was reading at the time, I had no idea what they were. Like, I couldn't make sense of a lot of the contexts, right? Because they weren't
Yeah.
my age grade at all.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Do you think that the childhood you had, and you have mentioned to an extent that books you did read, did influence your perception of the world? Where did that desire come from?
That is so interesting. I
Yeah.
think it came much later. there was a function of the kind of books that I read as well. And I think I keep mentioning this because there was nothing else to do. So the African Writers series, which I got introduced to later on, I think you are a big fan of the African Writers series as well. And you read Mariam Abba, Aminata Sofo. Yeah. So there was, to be honest, that came later. And you don't know how these things compound, like this knowledge. I mean, not knowledge, just the way that the world is being described to you, right?
Yeah.
So Africa was just like beautiful in my head. I'm like, oh, Africa is so beautiful, right? My idea of what's beautiful wasn't Western at all.
You've talked about how being young, being alone most of the time, you have to read a lot. And I'm wondering if that in any way shaped the direction you would follow later in life.
Yeah, I mean, there are layers to this, and thank you, Isio, for asking that. So, layers. One, those books make me wanted to like just go across. Two, there is the economic aspect of this, right? Again, making the money I was making, it wasn't like I had a lot of money to just up and leave the country. So that was also it was a good starting point for me. So aside from that economic aspect of it, there's also just what is available, right? And
Yeah.
what I had known, right? So yeah, I would say what influenced it were those three things. A, just that desire from the start, from that was, built by those books. Two, just the fact that it was for me what was economically viable at the time. Three, it was something that I knew. Like I already knew Ghana. Like, it was kind of like a second home almost at that point.
Something I'm curious about, and I would like to ask you, for some of our listeners out there, how difficult was it for you to find acceptance in your job search outside of Nigeria?
This is interesting because it wasn't something that I thought about from an acceptance standpoint. It wasn't from an acceptance standpoint. For me, it was always like, oh, they don't need this at this time, right?
Hmm.
And I mean, you've run a company, and there are times that you find a really great candidate, you love them, but they just are not what you need.
Yeah.
Maybe you needed a generalist as opposed to a specialist.
Yeah.
Maybe you needed someone who
Yeah.
has leadership experience as opposed to, just a creative shooting from the hips. So that
Yeah.
was what it was for me. So I didn't think it was something to surmount. If there was any surmounting, it was, just keep kicking, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good mindset to have, especially when you're searching for a job in a different country, to just approach it from the perspective of maybe I'm just not a good fit, but not in a negative way. Like the way you explain it, it actually really does make sense. And it takes away from the negative weight of like rejection of applying, nobody's taking me. It's like maybe they just want something else, and it's fine. It's really nice. Thanks for sharing that.
Hey, you're welcome.
You are honestly in a very good place in your career. You are doing amazingly well in marketing and communications. So you have a very strong career backing, but you still make this time for play. How does that work?
Man, this is a trick question because it's not in your list of things. I don't think I have an alternative. I think that's just what it comes down to. I think that internally there is almost a biological imperative that I think that I have, like just this overwhelming sense of wanderlust that if I didn't make time for, I would feel absolutely, consumed, right? I think that is one
Yeah.
thing, right? The second thing I would say is this: there are actually so many people who do this, who make time for play. It's actually, I don't think it's something that is such a big deal. I mean, you make time for play and you were running a business, right? Uh,
Not enough, if I would say. If I would say, I wish I could play way more than I do.
I mean, what is your idea
Way
of
more than I
play?
do. Being 100% in charge of my own time to squeeze in it all the leisure activities that I want, whatever they might be, to do something that makes my body sing and my soul happy. And that's play for me.
I think that I make time for play because, again, I feel like if I don't, I will not survive. And I also try to
Yeah,
combine play with work as often as I can.
yeah,
Usually, when I'm traveling, I'm not on leave. I'm usually like combining that with work. So that's something, that I do. Yeah, but play is such a, I don't think play has to be overt, like you said. You do your arts, and I
Yeah.
think it's brilliant, right? I have my plants, and I love those guys, right? Even though they stress the hell out
Mhm.
of me. But watering them in the morning is a type of play for me, and I'm so grateful that I'm able to do that. I do not take my privilege for granted that I'm able to do this,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I think for me, just like I am to a significant extent introverted, so I need to recharge. And if I don't,
Yeah.
I would just crash. So I think it's just like survival. And there's nothing
It's-
more moral than survival.
That is, I love that. There's nothing more moral than survival. I think I need to write it down somewhere.
Yeah. I stole that from Iran.
So,
Just before you
uh,
start thinking I'm smart.
can you talk about the differences in the corporate landscape that you've seen from your experience working in Nigeria, working in Ghana, working in France? What do you think?
So first of all, I'll lead with France. So my work in France was remotely done for the company that I worked with there. I would say the main difference is just that for this people, it's just very metric based, right? Like, okay, what numbers are we getting? But I don't have as much experience of France to be able to say that, oh, this is the way that it is across board, right?
Yeah.
I think for that specific company, that was it. Yeah, what numbers are we getting? That's fine. But I can speak to Ghana, I can speak to Nigeria, to a significant extent. And I think the corporate culture is very similar, whether we like it or not, right? It's
Yeah.
very human relationship led, right? People want you to massage them. People want to be managed, right? I'm so glad for my experience in Ghana because Ghanaians are they like to approach things with care and intention. I mean, the Ghanaians' predisposition to want to take their time to approach things, right?
Yeah.
And for Nigerians, that is against our nature, right? The average Nigerian, sadly, just wants to you know, go in guns drawn, right? So that, may be different, right? But indeed, like Nigeria, people do want to be treated like, human. They want to talk about their wives and, talk about all those things before they get down to business.
Yeah.
I think I have an interesting story from going to Ghana the first time. There was one of the people who I had to work with. They
Mm.
just seemed, again, in my head, I'm like, oh man, this person is not passionate about this work, right? I need somebody who's passionate. And every time I'll tell them about it, like, oh, like, I need more ownership from you. I need more energy. I'm not
Yeah.
seeing that.
Yeah.
And nothing was improving, right? But again, this was like 1 month in, and somebody who has been brought in from a different country to come manage them, right? Although I was getting this reaction from only them, right? But after a while, I'm like, okay, this is not working, and I just made a recommendation for them to be fired. So they were let go. And later on, I realized that somebody else on the team started displaying that same tendency. So I started
Yeah.
like, okay, what is happening here? Like, what is going on? I think there's something I realized later is that as a manager, there is always going to be things that you need to improve, and sometimes that takes patience, right? Whether you're in Ghana
Yeah.
or you're in Nigeria, right? And there would always
Yeah.
be a low performer on your team, no matter how good that team is. There would always be somebody that when you have conversation with everybody else and they go like, yes, I understand what you're saying. Questions I have, let's go execute. There would
Yeah.
always be that one person who would go like, oh yes, 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 I get it. And then after the deadline, they will now come back and say, actually, I have this question.
Do you think a better approach would be instead of thinking to fire the low performer in a team, especially when you're a leader from an immigrant background and you understand that you have different contexts? Do you think a better approach would be to work with them, train them, try to understand them? How would you approach that, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, knowing what I know now, my rule of thumb is 3 months. 3 months. Don't make any radical changes for the first 3 months. Just sit and observe, do
Yeah.
your work, and of course, like negotiate that into your contract going in. Like the first 3 months, so I just need to form with these people and achieve
Hmm.
norming, and then we can get to
Normally.
performance. It's kind of like the three levels of it, right? you
Yeah.
will form, right? Everybody's going to put up an air, everybody's trying to be a certain way. And at some
Yeah.
point, the forming is going to stop. And there is going to be some sort of norming happening where everybody's getting comfortable around each other, people are showing their true colors. And off the back of that, you can perform because now everybody kind
Yeah.
of like knows where everybody stands. And just baking that
This
into the
is great.
contract is important from from the scratch. I think it's beautiful to be able to do this. I'm grateful for that privilege. But in terms of building a career, I think it depends very much on the kind of career that you are, I mean, the kind of role that you're in or the kind of work that you're in. If you were a developer, yeah, this makes sense, right? If you were an individual contributor
Yeah.
on a team, this also makes sense to a significant extent, right? Let's say you are just a writer or a designer, right? You can do this work from anywhere. So I think it's easy for you. I think that's just really important to do at the very start if you're a young person, right? I mean, once you get to a certain age, you don't have access to that luxury again, right? So that means that very early on, you want to be able to work for exposure. I'm so sorry. I know that is not something that's something that
Yeah.
people frown at these days. But sadly, the world of the internet, the world of Instagram is not real world. With everything else in the world, the Pareto principle, applies. Out of 80 creators, 20 are most likely, making money from creation. The rest are not, right? And it's important to understand that context in how you approach opportunities. Some people just wouldn't be able to pay you right away. I don't think it means that they're taking advantage of you. I think it's left to you to look and say, what are my needs, right? What bills do I have to pay? What is the value that I'm getting from this, right? And I think answer those three questions, and if the unit economics makes sense, I think that you should go for it, right? When you're 21, 22, to I think up to like 25 even, I think the priorities should really be about paying your dues. But if you're looking to switch careers, I think the most impactful thing really is just focus. It's incredible how much you can get done in 3 weeks. 3 weeks of focus. It's incredible. It's incredible.
And this actually does tie into the next question that I have for you. Have there been any unique challenges you faced as an immigrant in business?
I think what I would say is challenges as a Nigerian, right? I've only ever been a Nigerian, so I can only
Yeah.
speak to that. And what I have realized is nobody trusts the Nigerian, and that's a big challenge. I was speaking at an event the other day, and I asked and said, "How many of us here are Nigerians?" And then, there was the end. And I said, how many of you have, in the middle of a conversation, having a really good conversation, and then the issue of nationality comes up, and then you say, oh, I'm Nigerian. How many of you have observed the way that the conversation changes, the way that people's guards go up? And over 80% of the people, put their hand up. They're like, well, yeah, that's the thing that happens. And that's the thing that I have dealt with as a Nigerian, right? Later on, it fizzles out because they go like, oh, you're not. And this is also the problem to go like, oh, you're not like other Nigerians have
Yeah.
met. And usually in my head, I'm like, this is troubling. Sadly, there's nothing I can do about it, but it's troubling because Nigerians is full of people who are not trying to take
Yeah.
advantage of you. So that is a challenge that I face as a Nigerian. The fact that you have to prove yourself. You have to, yeah, this just the fact that people don't
Yeah.
trust you, right? So just assuming the best intentions allows me to not say, oh, yeah, I'm going to show you what
Yeah.
it's like to be a Nigerian person, which is also kind of difficult. Like this is also very because what does it mean to be a Nigerian person? Like the concept of a Nigerian is it's been made into a
Yeah.
monolith. Yeah, like it's kind of like the way maybe the way people think of
Yeah.
black people, right? If you dial that back to what it means to be a Nigerian, there's just like a really huge scope,
Yeah.
a really wide spectrum, right? Across tribe, across temperament, across indoctrination, the way you're
Yeah.
raised. Anyway, just to answer that question very directly, the way that I've pushed through, I just approach things from a point of curiosity every time. I was kind of like, this is
Yeah.
interesting. What is new
Yeah.
here? What has
Yeah.
changed? What adjustments do I need to make? If something is changing, my first question is, what has changed? Right? Am I changing? Are they changing? Are the needs of the environment changing? But yeah, one is, assume the best intentions
Yeah.
on the other person's part, and that allows you to just, approach them with grace.
Yeah.
Second thing I think is being intentional about not perpetuating stereotypes. Working across board, there is also the understanding that the primary reason why we are here is to deliver value for the company,
Yeah.
and nothing is going to stand in the way of that,
Yeah.
no matter what you do or say. Like, I'm going to do the job and I'm going to do it so well.
Yeah.
And just to close it, earlier this year, I wrote some letters to the people on my team, and I didn't know this at the time until I was writing the letter. I knew that this person on my team was struggling, and what I wrote is that the best revenge
Hmm.
is good work.
When you send them the letter, did you realize that things were better in any way? Did it shift or change the dynamic of your team for better?
Oh yeah, yes, yes, absolutely. And of course, on a team, there are some people who are more vocal than other people, right? There were some of them who came back and said, "Look, Gbenga, thank you so much for that. I needed it because I wasn't
Yeah.
really sure how my job was contributing,
Yeah.
to the vision." There are some people who are very overt, and there are some other people
Yeah.
who are not as direct.
You know, I'm learning from what you've just said something really powerful, that there's no substitute to leading with humanness. And no matter how intense work gets, no matter the people we work with, people fundamentally want to be seen and they want to feel that they've been heard. And this thing that you just said, I just thought, oh my God, Isio, this is an amazing thing to do for your team. As someone who has also been an employer and an employee, I can understand the two feelings very well. As an employer, we're so busy with the goals of the organizations, of maybe the overarching KPIs that we need to meet, because we also report to boards of directors or maybe another boss, that even though we do try to tend some attention to our team members, we don't also factor in the insecurities that they may be while they're executing the job, because they are just might see that they are just contributing a little part to the huge pie. And so what you said really helps them to know and understand that you are seeing them and you're seeing the value that they may perhaps themselves be doubting that they're contributing. And so it's really wonderful. And I have to say, thank you so much for sharing. I can imagine the feeling being an employee to receive a personally written note from your boss to say, okay, I see you, I see your value, I wish you well. Just keep doing good work.
Yeah,
It's amazing. Thanks for
yeah.
sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm not going to lie and say that, that is altruistic. It's again, you know, if you want people to be better, you got to acknowledge the good
Yeah,
things they've done. I
yeah,
think that's
that is
just
true.
the truth. And when I get that from my boss, I know the way it energizes me. So
Yeah,
it's,
that is so
yeah.
good.
Okay.
So, Gbenga, thank you so much for your time and joining us in the show. We've now reached the last part of the show, and here we call them quiz style questions. What this means is that I'm just going to throw three questions to you, two questions actually, and I would like you to respond with a one word answer. After responding with a one word answer, you can explain a little bit why you chose the word and why that word is important to you. So the very first question is, what is one word that describes your personal philosophy at this point in your
Objectivist. It is possible to put myself first without putting with the other person second. It is possible for me to be
life? Very nice.
selfish without harming somebody else. Because selfish doesn't mean that I'm not considering the other person. What it means is that I am thinking of my needs without harming their own ability to meet their needs. And that was something that I wasn't for a long time. You know, I was, always self-sacrificial. And that's something I'm realizing. To be objective is to know that it is not a zero-sum game, right? They can
Yeah,
win and I can also win.
that is beautifully put. Thank you. So the second question I have to ask you is, what is one word that your closest friends or family would use to describe you?
Man, I think it would be ba wahala. Like,
Drama-free, stress-free,
yeah.
uncomplicated? What would you choose?
I like to think I'm a bit complicated, but
Okay.
definitely drama free. I would not give you drama.
The next question is a surprise question from our last guest. And the question from the last guest is, how do you stay anchored to your joy? So, what do you do to maintain your joy?
Find the place that gives you peace. Visit often. That
Yes.
is the way it is for me. Maybe because I'm a very temporal person. I Spaces are the ways that I don't know how to describe it, but I'm very temporal. I'm big on spaces, especially wide open spaces. Literally places that give you peace and visit often.
That's amazing. Super, super profound. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So before we round up the show, now it's your turn to ask a dedicated question, a surprise question for our next
This is good. This is my favorite part because I get to
guest.
plant, something for somebody else. But like, first of all, like whoever
Exactly.
asked that other question, thank you so much for asking it because it also made me think, how do I anchor my cause? Because some of these things you don't know them until somebody asks you. So my question is this: Is there someone in your life who has changed your life but doesn't know it?
That's so beautiful.
If that person exists, just thank them.
Thank you so much, Gbenga. Thank you so much for your time and joining the podcast, The Immigrant Success Stories. It's such a pleasure to have you. I do really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was great. It makes you think. Right? I'm gonna go back and process some of the things that I've said on this call a bit more as well.
Thank you, Gbenga. Enjoy Lagos on this beautiful, beautiful
Uh,
Saturday morning.
Thank you so much. Even though I can't enjoy it because my leg is broken, but
Oh, I'm so sorry about your leg.
yeah,
That is
I'm
true.
happy to be in 107 degrees Fahrenheit heat.
I cannot thank you enough.
Yeah,
Really.
you're welcome. Have a wonderful Saturday yourself. Regards
You
to
too. Bye.
you folks.
Thank you guys for watching. If you like this video or if you found it helpful, please share it, like it, and subscribe. It really helps us to reach many more immigrants in business and to bring premium content to you all. Thank you.